It is a pleasure to welcome to the program political satirist, candidate for mayor in New York City. You can check out more at Credico2013.org. We got a link on majority.fm. Randy Credico, welcome to the program, Randy.
Hey, it's great to be on, Sam, and congratulations on the awards and for the fine work you've been doing at Majority Reports, and when I see you on cable too.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, let me just say this. Usually in this segment, we have somebody come on to recommend a movie for me to watch online. We're not doing that this week because I'm going to recommend that people watch 60 Spins Around the Sun, which is a documentary that Laura Keitlinger, a friend of yours and an old friend of mine from back in the day, made about you. It's a great film, and we've linked to it. It's you can watch it on YouTube, and it gives a really good background of the work that you've been doing for years, activist work. But I want to talk about that. I want to talk about why are you running for mayor? You got 2% in the Democratic primary, which is actually, for people not in the know, that's an incredible amount of votes for somebody who doesn't have a war chest. I mean, Weiner got 4%.
Yes, Weiner doubled my amount. He had $5 million to spend, and whatever he got in matching funds. I spent $22,000, and most of that was spent on hiring people to petition for the primary as a Democrat, and then in the general election with what's called the Tax Wall Street Party. So I'm running as an independent. But the fact that I got 2%, 2.2% actually, was really earth-shattering. Really was. I mean, people are still trying to figure out how I did so well. Well, I had a pretty good base out there. People do know me. I've been involved in political activism in New York City for a long period of time, and just through social media. 2%. That's why they kept me out of a lot of the debates, because I did well in every single one of the debates that I was allowed to participate. And I also did very well in every one of the forums. In fact, these candidates did not want to follow me only because of my years as a stand-up performer, as a stand-up working strip joints 30 years ago. All that stuff built up some tough skin. And, I was a lot more charismatic than, your typical Democratic machine politician.
Yeah, people don't know this, but you you were on Johnny Carson, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson when you were, I think, in your late 20s. And if I remember correctly, you went on there. You did. You talked about U.S. foreign policy. You compared Ambassador Jane Kirkpatrick to Ava Braun. And as far as I know, that was the last time on the Tonight Show.
That was it for me. That included anything on NBC, even though Bob Morton liked me at the Letterman. I pretty much, but what are you going to do? I was like, it was my moment in the sun there. In 1984, U.S. policy was at its very worst in Central America. And that's right. By the way, that had such a big effect on me. I spent a lot of time in Central America back in the 80s. And I actually met Bill de Blasio, who's the next mayor of New York City, down there. And I'm sure that had a big effect on him as well. It could not have had a big effect to be in that country that was the victim of U.S. foreign policy. In fact, I took a bunch of comedians down there, people Jimmy Tingle, Barry Crimmins, and a few others down there, a kind of USO show, U.S. Out show back in the 80s. But yeah, I did talk about U.S. policy on the Tonight Show, and that was, I did a lot of Reagan back then, and although it was good for my career, I am the Sandinista, by the way, in this race. There's been a lot of talk about the incumbent, the next mayor, de Blasio, spending time there. But I really, I did fundraisers with Ortega, and I did fundraisers with Nora Storger, the ambassador. Hung out with Jane Fonda's kid Vanessa down there, went around and did comedy shows. So I'm proud of that era. It had a very big impact on my life.
Well, I mean, you keep referring to de Blasio as the next mayor. So tell me, what do you see if you don't think you can beat him in the race? What do you see your role in this campaign?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. During the Democratic, before the primary, during all the debates running up to, de Blasio wanted me around because I was giving him a lot of cover. I was far left in this campaign. I was talking about not just taxing the rich, and the plan that he has will never pass Albany. I don't want to get into that. But I have a tax Wall Street plan that would be far more workable and it raised a lot more revenue. But the thing is, I was able, my rhetoric, and not really rhetoric, is how I believe, what I was saying at these debates, it gave him some cover, and he kept moving to the left. The tale of two cities and stop and frisk. He supported stop and frisk for 12 years as a council member and public advocate. But in the last couple of months, I had meetings with him. I talked to him. I said, you got to just differentiate yourself from the other ones. I knew I couldn't win, but I didn't want the other two leading candidates or Weiner to win. So I had a non-aggression pact with him. Right now, what I can do is like make sure that Bill Bratton is not the next police commissioner. To spend the next 4 weeks attacking Bill Bratton for the kind of military rule he ran in Los Angeles. They're talking about bringing him back in to mollify the conservatives in this city. I don't think that's a good idea, and I will bring up some ideas here without slamming him, de Blasio. But just some ideas, what we really need after 20 years of 8 years of Giuliani, which is thuggish rule, and 12 years of imperial rule by the mayor, emperor type of rule by the mayor, edicts. Now that that's over, people are dying for a Paris Commune kind of atmosphere here. Will de Blasio be able to deliver it? Probably not. You know what I mean? The real estate interests are too strong in this city. Real estate and Wall Street interests are too strong, and it's very difficult to go up against those huge forces.
I love the idea that the interesting thing about what you've done in that race, and I think that I agree with you. I think de Blasio got a sense of which way the winds were blowing, and I think a lot of people seem to be surprised at the sort of the backlash against Christine Quinn for being such a Bloomberg enabler, and I think the foot dragging on the paid sick leave really, I think, sort of brought her positions into focus. And what she did with the St. Vincent's Hospital, I think, was another thing. But
taking money from the Rudin family and then not trying to stop. I was out there every day at the St. Vincent's because I live in that neighborhood, during the closing of that. And that, of course, really did kill. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but go ahead.
No, please continue. Go. I mean, because
but those things. Now, listen. He wasn't. He was kind of hanging around, and then what's his name parachuted in Weiner, who and I said, don't attack Weiner on this stuff about his sex life. I don't care about that. The fact that he supported the war in Iraq and most of the Bush platform, NDAA, HR 347, the surge, all of these things he supported by Bush and the Patriot Act, and those are the reasons to go after him. And then, of course, he just imploded. But the thing is, de Blasio was at my side and heard the response I got at every one of the forums and debates he and I participated in, and he saw that they couldn't follow me. John Lewis says, I don't want to follow Credico. Sal Albanese, the same thing, that people liked what I was saying, and they picked up on it. So it did. I don't want to take credit for him winning this, but certainly he had to do something. And then he came out and he embraced it like he was against stop and frisk from day one when he really was for it. For the last 11 years. We had a lot of arguments. I like the guy. He's an okay guy. I'm wishing him the best. This is what we're going to have. But getting into the race, I'm not really big on electoral politics, but getting into it and trying to move the debate to the left was my function, and I think that we succeeded. I had 2 ads in the Nation magazine who, ironically, ended up endorsing him over me.
Well, but I mean, that dynamic I think is fascinating because, there's always this sort of perception that individual contact with somebody, I think it's underestimated. And I think, the dynamic of him having to see the reaction that you are getting in these small forums around the city, that shapes his worldview. It gives him confidence to move to the left, or, I mean, however you want to look at it. You can look at it very cynically, like he just was, cravenly moved to the left, or he gave him confidence because that's who he is. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. That's, this is the persona that he is pursuing publicly. And I think that's, that's an amazing takeaway from this. Is just that.
Well, listen.
Go.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, continue.
Well, listen. I think, like, let's say there was this deal up at this huge forum with Leonard Lopate and Kurt Anderson hosted up at the Teachers College at Columbia. There were 800 people there. 800. And, I followed de Blasio, and I got a standing ovation there. You know what I mean? You can watch it on YouTube. It's there. And his performance, which he went on before me, I even gave him the shot. He came in with his son, Dante, said, you go on first, And then John Liu had to follow me, and the first thing he said was, I have the misfortune of following Randy Credico. So then I went out to Bay Terrace. The same thing happened there. And guess what? In Bay Terrace, the Jewish community there, at the Jewish Center there in Bay Terrace, I got 60% of the vote in that neighborhood. And a crowd of 800, I got up there. They were so, half asleep listening to 25 different politicians. And they saw me, and I did, some of my comedy stick, and not just kind of my personality, along with my policy, and the people ate it up. And we did the Gay Men Health Crisis Center together, de Blasio and I, and we always sat next to each other. But I had a non-aggression pact with him. He said to me after that one, he says, you're being too nice to Wiener. That's what he said to me. Wiener, that was the day Wiener imploded the Gay Men Health Crisis Center debate. He was over to my left, and de Blasio was on my right. And there's a nice picture of it that somebody sent, Credico and de Blasio playing footsies. So I didn't go after him. I wanted him to win the primary. I really wanted him to win the primary, and we met out in Brooklyn, out there in Park Slope. We talked on the phone. I communicate with him yesterday. But right now I gotta keep him honest that he doesn't bring in Bill Bratton. But the NYPD has a lot of control over this city. It's entrenched. It's got as much power. It's almost like a South American 60s style South American dictatorship, that the military is always there. In New York NYPD, you have a commissioner here who's been there for 12 years. He's a J. Edgar Hoover times Fauché of France and Boccini of Italy in the 20s under Mussolini. He's that tight, keeping files on everyone. He knows it. De Blasio knows it. It's a very difficult road to hoe against this police department.
Do you think that there's is the way to a more just society sort of, is it going to be incremental in that respect? The funny thing is, you talk about a half a percentage point transaction tax on Wall Street, which, in the context of you bringing it up in the mayoral race, you talked about it as radical, but it's not a radical thing at all. It's a fairly mainstream concept, and would obviously bring in a tremendous amount of money, as well as curbing the rampant speculation that creates bubbles and that creates financial crisis, et cetera.
Exactly. You hit the nail right on the head. That Wall Street transaction tax would end all of this super flash trading that's going on, and it would generate a lot of revenue. Now, Tom Harkin had a mild form of this, I believe, in the Senate, and Elizabeth Warren, I think, has something akin to it right now. I don't follow it as closely as you do, D.C., that much. I'm so focused on local politics right now. But, I have Richard Wolff, who's a progressive economist, who has been my assistant advisor on this matter. And a Wall Street sales tax, you have to couple it with a national sales tax on Wall Street, and then proportionally give it to the areas where the transactions are taking place. Just like in Alaska, everyone, Exxon gives, and all the other oil companies give money to the residents of the state of Alaska, because that's where they're making all the revenue with the oil. So, and in gaming in Las Vegas, I suppose, works the same way. But it would be it would really help out this city, instead of having these Mickey Mouse regressive tax schemes like cigarette taxes and scratch-off games and ridiculously high prices for both the subway and for the bridges and tunnels in the city, parking violation fines, and all. There's so many regressive ways rather than a direct hit on Wall Street. And look how much money they have. Seriously. They got us into this jam. They have to get us out of this jam.
I agree with you on that. And so, why do you think, do you think that de Blasio's plan to tax New Yorkers who make over $500,000 a year, presumably to earmarked for universal pre-K, you don't think that's going to get through Albany?
Well, first of all, just for universal pre-K, is that all we're looking for? You got 52,000 homeless people in New York City, and 22,000 are children. 22,000 children. That's got to be the first thing. They're closing public libraries left and right. Just because you're run by a dictator doesn't mean that the trains run on time. Our subway system blows right now. So I think that look, I like the guy. I don't want to attack him. I don't want him to lose, right?
Right.
Unless I beat him. I don't want Loda to beat him. And he's got such a big lead, I can't imagine him losing, but there's going to be a lot of red baiting and a lot of mudslinging going on here, and anything can happen. I'm sure they're looking for ways to destroy the guy. But the tax plan is specious because it requires, Boss Tweed, one thing he did is he got us half of this city we got. New York City runs itself, but the other half, Albany runs. And when it comes to a tax, an income tax, it's up to Albany. You just can't tax the rich locally. You can have a surcharge and things like that, but you just can't tax rich people. It takes an act of all. And Andrew Cuomo, who's the most conservative Democratic governor in the country right now. Everyone thinks he's a liberal or progressive. He is not. I've known him for a long period of time, and he is not going to raise taxes on the rich no more than he's going to pass medical marijuana in the city when he gets money bundled from Al D'Amato and other lobbyists, for the Committee to Save New York and from the pharmaceutical companies. That's not happening. So he's not that progressive, and he's a control freak. De Blasio is much more charismatic, and this is going to drive Cuomo crazy. Once he gets the job, he's going to be the voice of the state of New York and the city of New York. And I genuinely think that he owes it to those people that responded to the ads. He came out of the pack when he moved to the left, and so people are buying that. People are buying that, and no one's screaming. By the way, no rich people are screaming right now about de Blasio and this millionaire's tax because they know it's not going to pass. So nobody's complaining. A progressive real estate tax would be good too. The Yankees don't pay taxes. The Barclays Center doesn't pay taxes because they got this loophole called 421A that they're able to get tax breaks, abatements, and everything else, even MSG, as long as they promise to sign a paper saying that they're going to build some affordable housing. 421A. Well, the Yankees still haven't done that. The Barclays Center hasn't done that, and there's always a way out of it. But in the meantime, people's real estate taxes that make $80,000, $100,000, so you have a $200,000 condo are way out of line compared to what rich people pay. That's why there's a guy with a $90 million apartment here on 57 West. He pays what the guy who has an $800,000 apartment pays because it's under that 421A bill.
All right. Well, give me your thoughts on Joe LaHoda. Apparently, it's come out today that de Blasio has a 50-point lead over LaHoda, according to the CBS poll.
Well, so did the Jets. So did the Baltimore Colts against the Jets.
Right.
And so things can happen here. But Garibaldi liberated Sicily with 1,000 men against 25,000 Bourbon troops. Anything could happen. And I'll tell you, the problem with Loda is just not a good public speaker. He has no charisma. He's got some good ideas. His idea of legalized marijuana, which, of course, once again, it's up to the state legislature to do that and signed by the governor, has no tax plan. And, he smokes cigars. And he's got a good sense of humor. I did a debate with him and a couple of others, and I had him on the floor laughing, So he's a likable guy, one-on-one. And he's better than Senator McConnell, and he's better than Senator D'Amato when he was a senator. He's better on some things. And I don't see how we can really close the gap. The 50 points, but I don't believe the 50 point. I don't believe it. Just like, I was polling at less than 0.5%. I got 2.2%. Wiener was polling at 10, ended up with 4.
You take
John
these polls
Lewis
with a grain of
ended up with
salt.
7. Huh?
You got to take the polls with a grain of salt.
Listen, they don't do the polls. There's a lot of push polling going on, and there's 13 candidates in this race, and they're not asking about other candidates. There's 5 weeks left right now. And that guy in Italy, that guy Grippo, Beppe Grippo, who political satirist, came out of nowhere and was in the top 3 vote getters, his party. So he and I don't have the same politics, but, anything could happen between now and November 5th. Just like de Blasio, remember, just 2 or 3 weeks before, he was at 9%, and then he got 40%,
Give me I just want to get your take too. I mean, I've heard you say that that stop and frisk is really just symptomatic of a larger problem with the police department in this city. Give me your take on that.
Yeah, so stop and frisk I've been against since 1999. I ran the William Kunstler Fund for Racial Justice actually since 1997. That we were involved, as that documentary will show, with fighting against the drug laws in New York and around the country, including in Texas, Texas. But we had a program. We organized people from the black community to videotape, cops in action. I was taking pictures myself of these stops and frisks, and so that's the front line. It's the first line of the mass incarceration scheme that's going on right now. The prison industrial complex. I hate to use that kind of rhetoric, but it really is true. New York State has 61,000 prisoners, I believe, right now. There was 10,000 when Attica exploded. There are 3 ways to get people into the prison. First, you stop and frisk. Then you get them on drug charges, and then you get them before a judge. That's an ex-DA, and you got a DA that all he wants to do is win. They never give exculpatory material over to the defense attorneys. It's not Law and Order. You look at Law and Order, and my buddy Richard Belzer, I'm sorry that he's a propagandist. There's the Lenny Wiesenthal of the New York Police Department. No, I'm kidding, but it's just that. It's a stop and frisk. It's just one element. It's the criminal justice system is such a scam, and there's so much money involved in it. You got cops who make money, you got prosecutors who make money, defense attorneys who make money, you got judges who get retirement pay when it's over, you got assistant DAs, you got the guys who drive the buses, you got Rikers, there's so many elements too. And I'll tell you an example of how bad it's really gotten. When Obama was when he was sworn in 2009, January, there was a stock called CWX, Correctional Association of America. They build private and manage private prisons for the feds and for some states. Their stock was going at $8 a share then. You know where it is right now? Almost $40 a share the last time I looked.
Mm.
So there's a lot of money on the private level there, but there's also a lot of repression and a lot of money on.
Well, you got to fill those beds, right? I mean, if you're building these prisons, you got to fill those beds. There's a great series that people should check out that the Nation has done in conjunction with Brave New Films on the private prison industry complex. A series of videos. We'll put a link to that as well.
You know what? The problem is that's on a national level, but there's none in New York State. They're banned. We still got 60,000. Mario Cuomo built 37 of our 70 prisons.
Wow.
Andrews, who delivered that Tale of Two Cities speech back in 1984, I believe, in Mondale was the nominee, if you remember.
Yep.
So you got the ugly tentacles of this prison industrial complex on every level. It's difficult. It's a beast. It's like the military industrial complex. We have the same thing going right now, and the drug war is what really fuels it.
Randy, let me ask you, just talk to me a little bit about your move from being a comedian to becoming an activist. I've seen 60 Spins Around the Sun, and I know the story you tell about it in that film, but I'm just curious about your transition, because obviously on some level, I'm not the activist that you are, but in some level I'm still, I guess, arguably an entertainer, but I'm curious about just sort of that journey for you, and also, how you seem to be very good at both having very specific and passionate beliefs of where the society has to move to, but also be able to look and see that it is an incredibly tough road to hoe. It's a big mountain to climb. How do you maintain that attitude?
It's very difficult. It really propelled me into this. And first of all, when I first met you, I was at a party where Larry David was at, I think, and Mike Rowe, 20 years ago, I think. And you were doing stand-up then, and then next thing I know, you're doing political. It was an amazing transition that you've made, all right? So I congratulate you on making that transition yourself. And so you do what you can do. It's very despairing. It's very disquieting and mentally disquieting to be involved in prison work. You can burn out real easy. There's a priest up there, one of these liberation theologians upstate that used to visit the prisoners in the special housing units. Basically, you're in isolation in a hole underground for months at a time, and so he would go in and visit. He finally had a heart attack and had to quit because there's only so much we can take. Che Guevara was able to go to leprosariums, and his parish priest that I could do just about anything but that, and that's something I couldn't do. So there's certain things I can't do. My father did 10 years in prison before I was born. It had a huge impact on all of the kids in the family before I was born. It had a huge impact on him. It's in the documentary. But I know, that it's hell. Prison is hell. It's only supposed to be for the Hannibal Lecters of this world. It's not supposed to be for people like me because I smoke pot. I shouldn't be in prison, and neither should anybody else who smokes pot or does whatever they want to do with their body. But, you got a lot of people in prison there for 10, 15 years. There are no Brewbakers out there trying to help you out. And, it's a terrible experience. And I know I deal with prisoners all the time, and every single one of them is whacked out. And that's what really ultimately psychologically drove me into this work was somehow trying to reconcile my father's time in prison. Mm-hmm. And I did comedy for a long period of time. I did political humor. It was Bill Kunstler, who I met in 1985 or 86. By happenstance. I was, running around with Joey Heatherton, who had some legal problems, and I looked up Kunstler, and Kunstler had a huge impact on me. I ran his organization in 97 after he died. I ended up, after I did a Belzer documentary, his show, Another Lone Nut on HBO, but during that taping and afterwards, I was really dipping into the white powder a lot, and I got sober off of that. Experience. And I ran across a guy who had just gotten out of prison who did the same thing. You know what I mean? Who just did 12 years in prison for what I did, which was like for doing cocaine. And so I met the guy, and he's an internationally known get out of prison painter. And I started organizing families of prisoners based off the model of the Madres de Plaza de Mayo in Argentina, who actually came up to New York City. I brought 4 of the mothers from Argentina that were out there day after day after day after day to get rid of the dirty war administration of Videla, the U.S.-sponsored coup that took place there. And there's these women that were out there every day. They inspired me and my group called Mothers of the New York Disappeared. And, it does wear on you. It's hard to maintain your sense of humor and your enthusiasm. I can't go by a courtroom right now because I can't stand watching young black kids come in chains every single day, and couples of people that are coming in for jumping over a turnstile. Right now I can't handle it. I'm burnt out on it. So that's why I'm running for office, kind of running away from that, getting a breather from it, and maybe I can get back to it.
Randy Credico, the site is Credico number 20132013.org. We got a link to that. We also have a link to 60 Spins Around the Sun. People should check it out. It's a great film, and I really appreciate the work you're doing, Randy, and good luck.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, and I must say I want a shout out to the work that you've done, because I've seen you on filling in Current TV and MSNBC. And you've done a super job, a great job, and we need more people like you who have the gift of gab to get out of comedy, make the sacrifice, and go out there and blow the horn for justice.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Randy Credico. All right, folks. Thanks, Randy.